The Gilded Age series by HBO is often referred to as the American spin-off of Downton Abbey. Both were written by the prolific Julian Fellowes, yet while The Gilded Age is still to prove its long-term popularity, it certainly has one feature that puts it above Downton in my eyes. The majority of the Gilded Age characters are actually based on real people who left a hugely interesting and often extremely important trace in history.
New York is a collection of villages. The old have been in charge since before the Revolution, until the new people invaded.
In this series of videos, I uncover all of them, one by one. In this first episode, my heroine is the controversial Mrs. Russell, whose character was largely inspired by the stunning life trajectory of Alva Vanderbilt, an extravagant multi-millionaire socialite, or Alva Belmont as she would be known in her later life, the enthusiast women's suffrage activist. The Gilded Age series plunges us into the wealthy circles of New York in the 1880s and 1890s. It was the time when the American nouveau riche and industrial tycoons were converting their enormous newly built fortunes into riches of non-monetary value, reputation, and ability to change the social and cultural landscape around. At the same time, there is a thing that you certainly can't buy for the money. Your guess, what is it? Well, in this case, time, I suppose. In the series, Mrs. Russell, played by Carrie Coon, is a wife of a railroad tycoon who settles at Fifth Avenue in New York to become the new king of the city that doesn't sleep. However, they both quickly learn that the social currency cannot be bought with real currency.
I'm afraid New York can be quite challenging at first.
We haven't found it so, have we, George?
There is no challenge you are not equal to, my dear.
With her character, Julian Fellowes did obviously take inspiration from the remarkably ambitious and ostentatiously rich Alva Vanderbilt, who at the time was the wife of the railroad tycoon William Kissam Vanderbilt. Just like the series protagonists, Vanderbilts were resented by the almost stiff upper-lipped New York society and were considered nouveau riche.
I think we should know the Russell family.
We do not move in the same circles.
Mama, you are incorrigible.
I take that as the highest praise.
And that wasn't the only coincidence. Yet let's give Alva's incredible life a bit closer look. Alva Askin Smith was born in Mobile, Alabama in 1853 to a wealthy family with vast connections. As a kid, she used to spend holidays in Newport, Rhode Island, and summers in Europe, and as a girl attended a private boarding school in Paris. When Alva was 6, her parents moved to New York, where years later she would be introduced to William Kissam Vanderbilt, an heir to the railroad empire of Vanderbilts. Well, you already guessed that that's how she got her first loud surname. The couple would then have 3 children, and the destiny of a girl, Consuelo, is particularly fascinating. She had really complicated relationship with her authoritative mother. Right, she is the proper prototype of Gladys in the series, and I'll dedicate one of the next episodes to her, so please subscribe not to miss it coming.
Mother, may I present Mr. Van Ryn?
How do you know my daughter, sir?
Well, I don't, not really, but I want to, very much.
We cannot always have what we want.
Back to Alva. So imagine, the young woman had quite a pedigree, and now she married into one of the wealthiest families in America. Everything was at her disposal but one thing. The local elite New York society couldn't care less. It wasn't the money that they valued, it was the background. Several generations of the right background. I'll uncover the exact prerequisites of what you had to have under your belt to get accepted into the circle in my video about Mrs. Astor. Sub. To tell the truth, both sides sound creepy today, right? On the one hand, you had someone like, "I'm filthy rich, where is my seat in your private club's drawing room?" And on the other, they're like, did you hear anything? No? Neither did I. It's both kinda lame. Like, say, okay, maybe you are a really interesting personality and you achieve something extraordinary, say, in business or on stage, yet they won't let you in since you are the first in your family to do so well. Not enough. But yeah, these were the rules of late 19th century New York, and one had to obey them, or to break them and build something new, something better and more prestigious.
This sort of stunt does not impress the people you want to win over.
Mrs. Morris, this sort of stunt impresses everyone.
Sounds like a brave and ambitious plan, right? Well, it perfectly suited Alva Vanderbilt, who now knew how to use her family's money. Lots of it. Just like the Russells in the series, Vanderbilts built a luxurious mansion placed between 5th Avenue and 52nd Street, which they even called Le Petit Château, the small castle, which sadly or not was considered garish at the time.
What surroundings, Mrs. Russell. We could be at Tsarskoye Selo.
Yes, Catherine the Great would feel quite at home here.
Nevertheless, it served its purpose perfectly. For example, it became the stage, or to put it differently, to the party for her daughter Consuelo, the masquerade ball for 1,000 guests, which cost millions of dollars. It is shown in the Gilded Age series, and it indeed became a sensation and proclaimed the triumph of those new money ambitions over the old money traditions. Only Alva's dress cost more than $250,000, which is over $5 million in today's value. Perhaps it also deserves a video on its own.
You have outdone yourself.
Indeed you have.
It's not too much.
My dear Mrs. Russell, nothing is ever too much for me.
Yet the old money system wouldn't be a big league if it would be so easy to break. So when Alva Vanderbilt tried to secure an opera box at the Old Academy of Music, she was despairingly denied. No wonder it was under the control of the old New York and resented the intrusion of carpetbaggers. Well, Vanderbilts weren't easy to break too. They came so far for a reason. So they just founded their own music theater as an alternative. That's how the celebrated Metropolitan Opera was born in 1883. It is still the iconic stage of New York, while the old Academy of Music quickly went out of authority, lost its opera engagements and turned into a vaudeville. And in 1926 its building was demolished and everyone forgot about this place. The wealth of the Vanderbilt family had become so powerful in New York. So many enterprises depended on financial support from the Vanderbilts. The fortunes of so many of the old families were subject to injury or promotion through the enmity or favor of the Vanderbilts, that the oldest Knickerbocker families were gradually forced to surrender. The New York Times reported on the couple's legacy in 1899. All of that is perfectly reflected in the first season of the Gilded Age series. I don't know where fellow would take Mrs. Russell in season 2, yet the life of Alva Vanderbilt was just beginning. In the late 1880s, the family became even richer when Willie inherited the estate of his father. It looks like the couple didn't know where else to invest their money, so they dived into the competition of who is the wealthiest and the most extravagant family in America. It was then that they commissioned a yacht to tour the Caribbean and Europe in the highest fashion. Kind of the analog of the private jet, I suppose, yet think of something really special, since this vessel was the largest private yacht in the world. Although it all may sound cool and even mind-blowing, it really began to smell weird already then. Their ostentatious spending and how they used it to open every door was a bad sign of America falling into a trap of becoming a plutocracy, where the society is ruled by the power of money. And again, perhaps Alva wouldn't become so famous if she didn't feel the wind of change and been able to adapt. In 1895, she did an unexpected maneuver, divorced her husband. That was almost a taboo back in the day, yet Alva decided that it was time to put an end to the status quo image of a happy marriage. Moreover, it wasn't a secret that her husband had been long-term unfaithful to her. I guess that the screenwriter will elaborate on these events in the second season of The Gilded Age. But don't worry for her. The settlement she secured was a whopping sum of $10 million, something like $350 million today. Alva didn't stay alone for long, and less than a year later married one of her husband's old friends, Alva Vanderbilt Belmont, a banker and a politician, and another member of rich and powerful club of the American elite. That was a second marriage for Belmont too. In his young years, he was an unstoppable playboy and drinker who had to marry at the insistence of his family, his mother in particular. Well, it didn't help, and he left his wife already during their honeymoon in Paris. The divorce followed shortly, despite the fact that the new wife was pregnant with Oliver's child. Belmont went even further and said that the newborn girl was not his daughter and stripped her of the surname and the potential inheritance. Yet don't worry for all of them either. Both the first Mrs. Belmont and her daughter lived perfectly well-established lives in society and had no trouble finding husbands that would love and respect them the way they deserved it. And now, in the late 30s, Alva and Oliver decided to marry on their own accord. It looks like this time it was a happy marriage, and both spouses shared the same endeavors. Oliver grew interested in politics, and Alva also shared his interest and became particularly involved in the growing movement for women's suffrage. Not only she donated large sums of money to the related causes of women's rights, but also she wrote articles for newspapers, supported labor strikers, and founded the Political Equality League to get votes for suffrage supporting New York State politicians. In 1909, she became an alternate delegate from New York to the International Women's Suffrage Association meeting in London, an experience that deepened her commitment to the cause. Upon return to the US, she became an avid advocate for the inclusion of African American working-class women into their activist campaigns, who were previously centered on educated middle-class white women who were often reluctant to accept immigrants. By that time, her second husband has already died, and Alva often used their lavish mansions as headquarters or conference settings for their activist movement. In the end, she also established the National Women's Party and organized the first picketing ever to take place before the White House in January 1917. In 2016, President Obama designated a historic mansion in Washington, D.C., Alva bought for the party, as the Belmont Paul Women's Equality National Monument. In the last decade of her long life, Alva lived in France next to her daughter Consuelo, who would become the heroine of one of my next videos. I will tell you about their personal relationship there. Yet Consuelo also supported the women's suffrage movement abroad. So please let me know if you like this video, and yeah, let's discuss Alva Vanderbilt. So please let me know if you like this video, and let's discuss Alva Vanderbilt Belmont and her fictional alter ego Mrs. Russell from the Gilded Age series in the comments. See you in my other videos. Bye!